If everybody's ready, I'm going to get started. Our final presenter is here, but before we get started, I know that there was a discussion about having some suggestions and ideas for change. But, you know, if you're interested in getting DHHIG to set up a new committee, we want to make sure that you're sending your suggestions for workshops, how to improve in different areas. Recently, someone talked about wanting to post something on the website. And I told them, well, you should get involved in the committee. It's about volunteerism. You know, a lot of people don't know how to get started, and they wait for somebody to ask them to volunteer. You know, I think that it should be a two-way street. You should be approaching the DHHIG committees with your skills and abilities and interests. You know, maybe you would be working, 15 hours a year, a couple of minutes a day. You know, some people have talked very positively about it, but, you know, are there any of the committees that are looking for members? So I strongly encourage you to get involved. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin. I want to take a moment. Laureen Obermiller. I think I'm spelling her last name wrong. She's going to talk about GIS's sponsorship of this event.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. I was a federal employee for 20 years, and then I left and became a manager at Gallaudet University in the interpreting service. I also used to be one of the members of the DHHIG board, and so I remember many of you. It's great to see everybody again. I'd like to just pay tribute to the board, and they've done an incredible job of hard work through volunteer efforts coming together on behalf of all of the deaf and hard of hearing employees throughout the nation, providing resources and networking and a thoroughly beneficial opportunity for each and every one of you. I also wanted to talk a bit about Gallaudet. Gallaudet has established partnerships with the community. We're working with NOMA, with 6th Street, with H Street, and we are looking to provide communication access services, not only through Gallaudet, but all throughout the community. We have some local contracts, and we are soon to be looking at a GSA award. So we wanted to announce these things to you and let you know that we are providing interpreting services in the community. We do provide high-quality services. We have a screening process. We have many programs and mentoring program where we support interpreters in developing their skills. And I also wanted to recognize the interpreting team here from Gallaudet: Candace Barnes, Mark Holmes, Jamie Yost, and Diana Markell. And I'd also would like to thank the interpreters from Access as well as the other interpreters who are here today providing interpreting services. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce Pamela Galemore. She's a specialist, human resource specialist at OPM, focused on hiring policy and recruitment for the federal service. She's going to talk about 3 things today: early retirement, VISP, which is kind of new to me, voluntary service program, and reductions in force. As we heard this morning, the potential for reductions in force. So, welcome.
Okay, is this better? Alrighty then. What we're going to talk about today is voluntary early retirement authority and voluntary separation incentive payments, as well as reduction in force procedures. But before I begin, I would like to thank Mr. Vera for the invitation to present here today and to hopefully provide you with information that will be helpful to you should these opportunities or bad things happen within your individual agencies. Okay? We're going to talk about exactly what the current processes are, what the eligibility requirements are for VERA and VSIP, and how reduction in force works. Okay? These are all based in law and regulation, so that's all we're going to be talking about is what is currently, how the process works, eligibilities, as well as the process. Okie doke? If you have any questions during the presentation, please go ahead and we'll answer them as we go along. Don't want you to forget anything that you might have want answered, so most definitely ask and we'll try and answer as much as we can. I will let you know now, I will not answer what if scenarios, such as what if this happens to me, how is it going to affect me personally, what's going to happen to me, because I cannot answer that question. No one can answer that question until the process actually runs its course under reduction in force. But what we will do is provide you with some overview information so that at least hopefully you can know that you need to seek out more information if the scenarios are presented to you. Okay? What we're going to talk about is the purpose of VERA and VSIP, and I will be using those acronyms now. VERA means Voluntary Early Retirement Authority, and VSIP means Voluntary Separation Incentive Payments. They're also known as buyouts. Has everyone heard that term buyout? Okay, cool. That's the thing we want to happen so we don't have to go to the reduction in force or RIF process, okay? We're going to talk about the eligibility criteria for both of the VERA and the VSIP and explain how agencies may offer these to their employees, okay? And then we're going to cover a very, very, very basic and broad overview of the RIF process. Please understand that you will not know the entire RIF process when you walk out this door. It is very nuanced, but you will know what the terminology means. You'll also know what, hopefully, if you know what service you're in, you will know what your retention standing is. So you'll have a huge leg up on your fellow employees who have never had a RIF course. Okie dokie. The purpose of VERA and VSIP, main purpose, are tools to assist and implement management decisions when an agency must reduce its workforce or reshape its workforce. What we mean by reshaping is, say, for instance, these examples are somewhat dated, but they're all I have at this point, that, say, for instance, you have a function that's done manually, and it's been decided to automate that function. So there might be jobs that are no longer available who did the jobs manually because they're going to automation, so those jobs may be abolished. Or you can, and then an agency, they may not have any vacant positions left, but they know that they have to do this because either Congress has told them to do it or they've made a decision that that's the way we're going to go to become more efficient, okay? Or for instance, that an agency has found that they have too many supervisors and they want to reduce their supervisory to employee ratio. Say it's 8-to-1, they want to go 15-to-1. So that means some supervisory jobs might be abolished. Now, there may not be necessarily any separations that occur to that because a RIF could potentially downgrade folks. What will happen is if those jobs are abolished, they might restructure that slot into, say, another journeyman level job. So that's what we would call reshaping. They don't need this grade anymore, they need this grade. So they're reshaping the former position to the new position. Okay? Everybody kind of get that? Excellent. The main point about VERA and VSIP is to incentivize voluntary separations, be it resignation or retirement, in order to avoid a RIF. In VERA and VSIP, these are voluntary actions. The employee, if covered by the agency's plan, decides to take advantage of it, and they voluntarily go. They leave the government. This is not to leave the agency to go to another agency. This is to leave government service, both of these programs, okay? It's to avoid the impact or lessen the impact or avoid the need entirely for a RIF, because nobody wants to RIF. Human Resources doesn't want to RIF. The management doesn't want to RIF because they don't know who going to be left with, and certainly the employees don't want to RIF because you just don't know what's going to happen. And you'll see kind of why I say that once we get into the process, okay? And I'm old, so I need my glasses. And I have too many things in my hands. The other main thing for everyone to understand is that VERA and VSIP are management tools. They are not an employee right. They are both position-based actions. Almost everything in federal human resources is position-based. You get a position because you're qualified for it. The position is established and graded based upon the duties and responsibilities. So it's all position-based. RIF is also position-based, as you will see. Agencies, both for VERA and VSIP, they must get OPM, Office of Personnel Management, approval, okay? And that request must come from the headquarters level. An agency component like Yosemite National Park cannot come into the Office of Personnel Management, or OPM, and request VERA and VSIP for his or her park. They have to come from the headquarters, so that not only means National Park Service, that means the Department of the Interior, because the headquarters is basically authorizing their component to request VERA and VSIP from OPM, and they would be the ones administering the authority to the component within their agency. Okey-doke? The basis for a VERA, or voluntary early retirement request, the A means authority, so we just say VERA, is if there's going to be delayering. Like I said, the supervisory to employee ratio might be reduced. If there's going to be a reorganization, like they're going to eliminate jobs or they're going to downgrade jobs because they want to reduce costs. There might be a RIF. If they don't get VERA and VSIP and they don't get enough voluntary separations, they're going to have to go the involuntary route, where it's no longer the employee's decision to take advantage. It's going to happen to the employee, and it's going to happen to the employee because of the process. They will likely separate or downgrade a certain percentage of employees, or the employee is in a position identified as being surplus. For example, the automation example. They've gone from manual process to an automated process. That would be in excess of identified and surplus positions. The key is it's all in relation to positions. Does everybody see I have too many union members up there? No, it's I need to change my positions. I need to change my organizational structure, okay? We're just going to put this down over here. Okay, the agency makes the decisions, and what they submit to the Office of Personnel Management for our review, and we have to review and ensure that it meets the law and it meets the regulations. Okay? If the agency justifies their request based upon those two things, then we can approve it for the agency. Then the agency administers the authority that we have given them. They determine, they meaning the agency management, determines which positions will be covered by the VERA. For example, they could say Yosemite National Park has to reduce jobs, so we are going to offer VERA to only employees in Yosemite National Park. That means people in Arches cannot get a VERA. It's only authorized by the agency in that area, okay? When to offer it? What are the windows? We're going to offer it to anybody who wants to retire between now and is off the rolls by July 31st can take advantage of VERA. We will give them an authority generally through like a fiscal year. Like say if an agency comes in now, we will give them, or they will request, and we will generally provide, if they justify their request, authority through September 30 or December 31st, the end of the calendar year, but the agency has the authority to open windows within that overarching authority period, okay? They will determine how many can retire. That's why it's important for you to understand and be prepared if these offers become available. If you are ready to go, but you're not eligible for optional retirement yet, and you would take advantage of a VERA, be ready to make a quick decision, because there is no regulatory or statutory minimum period that an agency has to give employees to make a decision, okay? So it's better that you be prepared for as much as you can possibly be prepared for, because to be honest, nobody knows what's going to happen within the next couple of years, okay? The agency will also determine the criteria for who is going to be receiving an offer and who's going to be approved for an offer. That means like they may limit it to certain grade levels. Again, if the goal of the authority in the first place is to reduce supervisory levels, then they might only offer it to supervisors, because you still need people left to do the work. And that's one of the things that OPM looks for, is to make sure that the agency request makes sense. That from an organizational standpoint, the agency, after these programs are done, they can still successfully perform their mission and functions that Congress gives them money for and the American taxpayer expects them to perform, okay? Generally, some of the criteria, like say too many, they say they will allow 10 people to leave, and then that's going to meet their goal, they can meet their reshaping goals. If 15 people apply, most agencies will generally say the service computation date. Like the ones who have the highest service computation date will be able to go, okay? Like those who've worked for the government the longest, we'll let you go, and then once we get our 10, that's it, okay? The latest date for VERA separations for the window. Now remember I said that OPM will give the agency the authority through an end date, like for example September 30 or December 31st. The agency determines the window. They can and generally do say, in order to take advantage of this VERA opportunity, you must separate under VERA, retire by June 30th. And that's fine if anybody doesn't want to retire by June 30th, but that's the last date the agency is going to approve for that window. And again, just because an agency might have authority beyond the window that they're offering, and everybody knows, employees know everything. Agencies try to say that, well, we'll just offer a window, and then we'll decide if we want to offer another window. And we just won't tell the employees that we have the authority through, September 30 or December 31st. And we somewhat chuckle to ourselves and go, you think your employees don't know how long you have that authority for? They know. All you need is one. All you need is one employee to know what that authority through date is, and everybody's going to know. So there's nothing wrong with that, and that's one of the things we try to tell the agencies, is to be as open and honest with employees when all this stuff is going on as possible, because employees need the information to make life decisions. It's very difficult to make decisions if you can make the best decision you can with what you have at the time, but the more you have at the time, the better your decision possibly could be. So we try to truly encourage the agencies, be as open and honest as possible. Okay. And one other thing just to note that, again, OPM gives them an authority to a through date, okay? If an agency processes a VERA and they have a specific authority number that's assigned to that request, if they process a retirement under that VERA authority beyond the termination date of the OPM provided authority, OPM, when the application gets to be processed, they'll deny it. And the agency will have to bring that person back, and that vacation that you planned upon your retirement is going to have to be put on hold, because the agency is going to have you back and you're not retired. Okay? So that's why make sure if you have a VERA offer, if a VERA offer comes to your agency, go to your HR office. Make sure you get a calculation, a retirement calculation for your annuity, so that you can be sure, again, that you have as much information as you possibly can. And before agencies even come in to request VERA, they are fully aware that the audience, once they open that announcement, that they're going to be flooded. Their Human Resources Office is going to be flooded with people wanting to find out more information. What are my eligibilities under this authority? Can I retire under it? Okay? And what is going to be my annuity under it? Now, the agencies are going to give best guess because they have the same laws and the OPM guidance, but OPM is the final arbiter of what the actual final annuity will be. but you'll have some information to go forward with, okay? And some agencies might even say, we're going to go ask for VERA, and just to let employees know so that they can go ahead and potentially have folks taken care of beforehand, especially if it's a smaller organization. Large organizations, it's kind of difficult. The agencies truly have to plan their human resources. Okay. Any questions so far? Woohoo! Okay. Eligibility for VERA. VERA means voluntary early, okay? If anybody is an optional retirement eligible, obviously you can go whenever you want. You don't need VERA to retire. The VERA is only for persons who do not meet optional retirement eligibility. In order to be eligible for a VERA, you must have at least 20 years of federal service and be 50 years older or older. Okay, so it's 50 and 20, or 25 years of service at any age. So you could have 25 years of service. I had 25 years of service in my late 40s. Unfortunately, we were not offered a VERA. So, but that would, you'll see, I'm under CSRS, so that would be a bit of a reduction as well. If you go under civil service retirement system, okay, it's a 2% reduction for each year you're under 55. That means, and that is a permanent reduction. It doesn't change when you reach age 55. So that's another thing to consider if you're looking at VERA as a possibility if it comes up to you, okay, if the opportunity is presented. FERS, there is no reduction. And I'm ignorant on FERS, and I know there's something about between the date of retirement and age 62, and there's discussion up on the Hill on that as well. So we're not quite sure what's going to happen with that. But right now there is no reduction like there is in CSRS for a VERA. Okay? You must have been on the agency's rolls for 31 days before the agency made the request to OPM. The point of that is, it's not like, oh, Energy got a VERA. I want to see if I can get a job over there. I know somebody over there. Maybe I can get a job there and I can get the heck out of here. It's not going to work because you were not on the agency's rolls when they requested the VERA, and that is a statutory requirement, okay? It's to avoid people from agency hopping so that they can get out of federal service. That doesn't benefit either the losing agency, the gaining agency, or the taxpayer. You must occupy a position covered by the agency plan. Again, I said that the agency submits the request to OPM, we review it, and it's position-based, okay? So if you're not covered by that plan, you would not be eligible for the VERA. The agency announcement will specify who's covered, okay? Hopefully they will only give the VERA notification to folks who are eligible so that the person doesn't sit there and go, oh man, he got one and I didn't. So they're going to find out anyway. And like I said, employees know everything. But at least, again, it comes up to the communication with the employees. Okay? And again, the employee must specify by the agency-determined date. It doesn't necessarily have to meet the authority through date. It's the agency's window date that they have established for that VERA window. Okay? Does anybody have any questions? So now you all know everything about VERA. Well done. Okay. And by the way, we get this a lot too. Say, for instance, the authority has expired, or we grant an authority through September 30 based upon the agency's request. There is always going to be someone who is 1 or 2 days short. There is nothing we can do about that. Okay? It's just, the federal government, as you know, is very, very large. There's always going to be somebody 1 or 2 days short, but that doesn't matter. We have no authority to adjust the eligibility requirements. Okay? Those are all statutory. Okie doke. Go. There we go. Another eligibility in relation to VERA is that the person could not have received a notice of involuntary separation for performance or misconduct. That's a final decision notice. Okay, I'm sure some of you all are aware there's been an agency recently in the news about the little shindig they had out west, and there are people who are possibly in serious trouble for that. But if there's anybody in employee relations here from the Human Resources Office, there's a process that is also followed to discipline employees for conduct or performance. They are entitled to those procedures. There's a proposal notice that says what the agency is going to do or proposes to do. The employee is given a right by statute to respond to that, and it's got to be at least 30 days. And then the agency will issue a decision notice. This is what we have decided to do, the action we have decided to take. We're either going to let you keep your job, we might have decided to demote you, or we might have decided to separate you under current statute or regulation. That is the eligibility, the notice that would preclude an employee from taking a VERA, okay? While the person is in the proposal state or during an investigation, if they're in a covered position, a position covered by the plan, there is no statutory or regulatory basis for the agency to deny that person the opportunity to leave by a VERA, because then it gets personal, okay? Did everybody get the kind of the difference there between it's position-based, but the statute says if we're going to fire you, we're not going to let you leave early, and we're not going to give you the annuity that you would otherwise get, okay? There is some fairness in law. It's surprising, but it does exist. Also, obviously, the person can't be serving on a time-limited appointment, the one that has a not-to-exceed date associated with their appointment, okay? These are the laws and the regs governing VERA, okay? There are separate laws for the civil service retirement system. The few of us left. Is anybody here still under CSRS? We're dwindling, but we're still here, aren't we? Okay. And then the FERS employment system. They're basically identical. They're just in two different pieces of the statute because Chapter 83 covers CSRS, Chapter 84 covers FERS. But the language is essentially identical, okay? The other thing you have to know about taking a VERA, it's a voluntary retirement. If you want to come back to the government, you could apply, because you generally would have had career tenure. I'm assuming, saying the person was in the accepted service. They could apply as a reinstatement eligible. But because you left voluntarily, because it was your decision to leave, and it wasn't an action taken by you by the agency, like a RIF, if you come back, you can. There's no problem with that. You can be reinstated, but you would be reinstated as a reemployed annuitant, okay? A reemployed annuitant, by law, serves at the will of the appointing officer. So if you come back to government and want to continue your career as a reemployed annuitant, they could fire you if you look at them cross-eyed. You got no rights. You have no appeal rights or anything. But nobody's going to do that because they don't want to deal with the bad publicity and be above the fold in the Washington Post. So, but you have to be aware of that. There is no waiver authority to that. It is by law. It doesn't matter if the agency told you or not, okay? It's a matter of statute, and that's just the way it is, okay? We have a question?
For reemployed annuitants, do they lose their leave status?
Everybody got the question? Okay. Remember, as a reemployed annuitant, okay, you're saying if you come back, would you still have like your 8-hour leave category?
Yeah, exactly. If you have those benefits, do you start over again? Same with your SCD.
Why are you asking this? There's no way you're eligible to retire early.
Just nosy, out of curiosity.
Basically, just because you retired, your service doesn't disappear. So yes, your service comp date would still reflect all of your prior federal civilian service. However, as a reemployed annuitant, not only do you serve at the will of the appointing official, your annuity will continue, everything will be the same, except you'll be working. Your salary that is assigned to your job will be reduced by the amount of your annuity, okay? So the annuity plus the salary that you were paid by the agency will equal the salary for the job. is called salary offset. And it's again statutory.
So if I decided to retire later, will my service time be added to my annuity, or will I be stuck at that same annuity from when I originally retired?
Now you're getting a little bit too technical for me. That is getting into the nuances of federal retirement computation, okay? There is an excellent resource on the OPM website. It's called the handbook, or the CSRS, CSRS, / FERS, FERS, Handbook for Civilian Personnel and Pay Offices. If you go to opm.gov and click on the subject tab, brings up the alphabet, click on H for handbooks, and it's like the first handbook. That is the Bible for agency HR offices. It's the OPM guidance, the official OPM guidance on the implementation of the retirement laws. So that's where I generally recommend folks go. If you have general questions about it, they have a whole chapter on reemployed annuitants. It's excellent, okay? They even have a chart they have charts in the back that talk about if you left this way and you come back this way, this is what happens. And it talks about the types of questions you're asking. Like say, if I was RIF'd and I came back, I left involuntarily. It wasn't my idea. But if I come back, that was under what's called a discontinued service retirement. It's the same eligibility criteria, 50 and 20 and 25 in any age. However, it was involuntary. And if you go out under CSRS as a discontinued, you come back, your annuity stops, and you basically start over again. You start your job at full salary. Okay, the annuity's over. Now you're a regular employee again. FERS does not have that option under the law. FERS still comes back as a reemployed annuitant, even if they were involuntarily separated. Okay? But I would recommend going to that handbook because, and it's huge, so you just want to figure out the chapters you want to go to and peruse those chapters, okay? And then I will almost guarantee that your answer is going to be found there. If it's not, check out your agency human resources benefits officer, okay? Is that good? Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Oops. Okie dokie, are there any other? Okay.
I learned that there was a new law that was going to require 30 years of services and a minimum age of 62. If you were less than 62, you would lose 5% for every year. So if you had 30 years and less than age 62, there would be a discount to your annuity at 5% per year that you're below the age of 62.
There's something funky about the FERS. I dealt with CSRS.
Clarification about whether it was FERS or not.
It's definitely not. It's definitely not CSRS. Okay, they're just waiting for us to go away. I don't think they're going to mess with our law too much. There's a few of us left, but under FERS, currently, the retirement is a minimum retirement age. For example, I was born in, so my retirement age was 56 and like a month or something under FERS, with a minimum of 10 years of service. My computation is based upon how many years I actually had, but I would be eligible at that point, okay? If there's something about FERS, if you go out under 62, then there's a generally that's when we become eligible for Social Security, and there's a supplement that you would get until you got to that age 62. I believe the conversation, there's a whole lot of conversations going on up on the Hill, as I'm sure you all are following as well. Nobody knows what's going to happen, but one of those is that they're considering, or a discussion has come up about not having that supplement anymore between the time the person retires, if below 62, and age 62. But that's about the extent of my knowledge on that, so I would suggest contacting just the general FERS eligibility and what happens if you retire below 62. Well, no, because there is no proposal that I've seen to raise the retirement age to CSRS. Social Security is, CSRS, straight CSRS are not eligible for Social Security based upon their federal service. If they had, persons who work solely under CSRS are not entitled to Social Security based on that service. They may be eligible based upon other private sector, but CSRS is its standalone retirement system. The FERS has the three components. They've got the basic annuity, the thrift savings plan, and Social Security. So again, I'm just going to hush now about FERS because I'm not as well versed in FERS as I was in CSRS. So I would suggest talking to your HR office. But the only thing, I haven't seen anything about raising the retirement age, or there has been discussion about that supplement that is in play if you retire below 62 under FERS. And it's only under FERS that it applies. So if you are under FERS, you definitely want to talk to your HR benefits counselor, okay? Okay, uh-oh.
Now, speaking about FERS, related to Vera, if I qualified in the category over 25 years, but maybe I'm only 50, making 32 or 33 a year. So if they offered me Vera, I'm sorry, 33 years of service. So I took Vera as a part. So now I wonder, my retirement, my Social Security, and all of that process, you know, could an HR specialist explain that more, or can you explain it more?
They're going to have to explain it. Okay? We're getting into the nuances now of retirement, and we are never going to get through all this. And besides that, I will lead you all astray. So we don't want to do that either. Okay? They're the best folks qualified to talk on it. And they can give you all these different things. They've got the law, and also, if, again, checking out the handbook is real helpful as well. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. You can't retire.
I have another retirement question. I know I'm not eligible, but I am curious. If Vera were offered to me and I was under the minimum retirement age, there's a penalty for every year. But would that... So, you know, I know there's an annual penalty of the 2% per year if you're below a certain age.
For CSRS.
Yeah. Right. So now if they were to offer me that without the penalty, or will that penalty eventually go away?
That is in law. There's no way it can, under CSRS, an agency has no authority to waive that penalty.
So it doesn't matter, there's still a penalty that will apply.
If you're under CSRS, and I'm also doubtful you're under CSRS.
No, I converted.
Oh, okay. Well, that's okay too. Okay. Okay. Next.
I've worked for the government for almost 8 years. But if in the future my eyesight were to worsen, will there be an early disability retirement option?
If I'm not qualified to talk on FERS, I'm definitely not qualified to talk on disability retirement eligibility. Okay, that's a whole nother set of laws. Okay, and they're
Yeah, I know it's a good question, but it's not under the topic she can address.
yeah.
Can you explain what she means?
I can't do disability retirement. That, like I said, that's a set of laws I am totally, completely ignorant on. Okay, I'd suggest contacting your human resources or, again, the handbook. Even though there's a whole chapter in there on disability retirement as well. I'm just not qualified to answer your question. Okay. Okay, any other Vera non-really technical FERS or computation questions? Okay. Okay, now to the really exciting one. VSIP. Okay, VSIP, voluntary separation incentive payments, also known as buyouts, again, are a management tool. They are not an employee entitlement. Because we get calls, it's like, well, I heard such and such agency's offering a buyout. I'd go if you give me a buyout. It's like, that's wonderful. If their agency comes in and justifies the request in accordance with the regulation and the law, and you happen to be in a position covered by their plan, fine, you can go. But not unless that is the situation. It's a management tool in order to avoid RIF, okay? Generally, VSIP is going to be less expensive overall than running a reduction in force because in VSIP, it tops out at $25,000. The agency has no statutory authority to pay any more than that, okay? They can also pay less than that if they choose. The law says the agency may pay up to $25,000 or what the employee would have gotten had they been entitled to severance pay. It's the lesser of the two. So if somebody's like, say you've been in government for 5 years and you're going, dag, I'd leave if they give me $25,000 or a buyout. It's like, you ain't gonna get $25,000. You're gonna get whatever the amount of 5 weeks of your pay is, because that's what your severance pay entitlement would be. So not everyone is eligible for the maximum $25,000, okay? That might be a shock to some, but that's just the way it is. Okay, the agency determines the amount. We've seen agencies now, they'll come in and say they're gonna offer $25,000 if the employees leave by, say, July 31. And they'll let the employees know if we don't get enough to meet our goals, so we can avoid RIF, and we do open another window within our authority period, we're only gonna offer 15 if you separate by the end of the year. Totally within the agency's discretion to do that, okay? Remember, the idea is to incentivize voluntary separations, be it retirement or resignation, so that the folks who wanna keep working can, and in the job that they were hired to do, okay? Right. Another major concern, we have a question?
Are all agencies held to the standard, or do independent agencies have a little bit more latitude?
Does everybody have the question? It depends. It's like everything in human resources. It depends. Don't you love when you go to your HR office and you ask them a question and they go, it depends? Because it does. It really does. And your question is, do independent agencies? It depends how they get their money, okay? Agencies that are, basically, the law that I'm talking to is called Title V, United States Code. This is our law that governs the federal civilian service. Agencies have other statutory exemptions that Congress gives them, like, for instance, the Postal Service. Everyone's heard about the Postal Service, and they're offering VERAs. They're covered by our title. They're covered by Title V, and they had to come to OPM to get their voluntary early retirement authority. However, they control their own money, obviously, to a certain extent. So they were not required to come to OPM because they're statutorily excluded from Title V for that purpose. So they determine if they're going to offer buyouts and how much and under what rules and criteria. Okay, so yes, certain agencies may be able to play around with it, but if they're covered by Title V, the law says 25 max. Okay? The main thing I want to point out, if there's a VERA VSIP, and generally agencies are coming in and requesting both, because if you're going to retire, why not go ahead and take a VSIP and go with a little extra cash? And by the way, you're not going to get $25,000. If they do offer $25,000, that buyout is considered income, so it's subject to tax. So in the DC area, it's normally maybe $16,000, $17,000 that's ultimately in the check, okay? If you want to come back to the government, after you've taken a VSIP, a voluntary separation incentive payment, let me finish this first, okay? Remember, it's a voluntary action. There is a restriction. If you come back to work for the government of the United States, that's broad. That includes the Postal Service, okay? Because they still are part of the government of the United States. Within 5 years from date of separation, you must repay the entire $25,000 to the agency that paid it to you, okay? Remember the point of these programs, to incentivize your voluntary separation. You said, give me the money, I'll go, okay? I'll be very altruistic, and I'm doing it to save my fellow employee, as opposed to, I'm done, I'm getting out of here. But you said you would go. The law says that if you come back within 5 years, you must repay the amount of the total amount, that would be $25,000, to the agency that paid it. OPM does not get involved with the issues between the employee, okay, the employee that took the buyout and the IRS. That's up between the employee and the IRS. And then we'll get back to you.
So if they take $15,000 in tax, and then if they take the tax out, then I still have to pay the full $25,000 myself?
Yep. Yep. Because the agency paid you $25,000. The IRS took their tax. Okay? The IRS, I mean, the agency doesn't care that you had to pay the tax. That's between you and the IRS. You owe me $25,000 because you came back. There is a waiver provision. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
So let's say I take it, and then there's a maximum of $25,000. Would my annual leave be on top of that $25,000, or
you're really concerned about this annual leave, aren't you? It's separate. Annual leave is a separate entity. You get paid for your annual leave. That's a separate law. Okay.
Great. Thanks.
We're going to talk after. Okay. Okay, doke. And by the way, again, OPM would have to approve the agency's plan. And I must tell you that the VSIP law is much, much more dictatorial than the VERA law. The VERA law says the agency has to have a plan. They have to prove to OPM that they're going through delayering, reorganization, have surplus employees, etc. That's what they have to tell us. The VSIP law says you will tell us why. You will tell us the specific positions that are being reduced or eliminated. You will specify how long you need it, etc. But that's the piece that's much more difficult at times for the agency. They must specify the positions that they are going to offer it to and the categories that they're going to abolish or reduce, as well as the categories of employees are going to offer it to, okay? So without that, if the agency doesn't do that list, we can't approve it by law, okay? And OMB gets involved in the buyouts as well because it's money. So, of course, they're not involved in the VERA stuff because OPM is responsible for the retirement systems. The law says OMB has to concur in the agency's plan before they can offer a VSIP. Okay. We good? Basically, the agency has to offer the plan, or they have to submit their request. The headquarters, again, it has to come from the headquarters level to OPM, specifying the proposed organization, the specific positions, etc. Okay? The agency decides. Remember, it's an agency tool. Yes?
You have 20 minutes left.
Oh, seriously? We're in deep trouble. Okay. We're going to do this really, really quickly because I want to give you at least a couple of things about RIF. Okay? Any quick questions? If you, again, emphasize you need to be ready if your agency is going to offer it to you. Okay? Decide if you're ready to go because the time frame to decide may be short. Those are the most important things. The agency is going to decide. The agency will let you know if you're covered by their plan. Okay? It's the same type of criteria for eligibility. The only thing about VSIP is you have to have at least 3 years of government service to be eligible. If anybody's ever received a buyout before, they are not eligible for a second buyout. You get one under the law. That's it. Okay? Even if you come back, if you wait 5 years and come back and you happen to be in an agency that's undergoing reduction in force as well, it doesn't matter. You are not eligible by law for another buyout. You get one a lifetime. Okay? Okay, lots of law and the resources. Hopefully it's within your, you have a copy of the presentation, so this information is in there, okay? No, you don't? Let me go back. It's the same one as under the VERA. Yes, sir.
What's the last time with standing up? $25,000. How many years ago?
1994.
1994.
Yep.
Well, right now with the inflation, that we should have been paid up a little bit more.
Okay, are you a federal employee, sir?
Yes.
Do you think the Congress is going to pay us more to go away? My personal opinion is we don't even want to go there because maybe the folks that want to take away our benefits or are looking closer at our benefits may not know exactly about the VSIP program, and we don't want to raise that flag because we might lose that too. Okay? We just don't know what's going to happen, but I can say that there has been no support for increasing the $25,000 in the current environment. With the full understanding that, yes, it's been $25,000 since the first buyouts in 1994.
What is the inflation cost?
They don't care. And that's really, I mean, there's just not going to, there's no way that that's going to happen anytime soon, in the foreseeable future that we would say, okay? A couple things I just want to tell you about RIF, okay? RIF is, again, position-based, okay? Whereas the agency controls VERA and VSIP, agencies have no control once they decide which positions to abolish. Then the process controls who stays and who no longer has a federal job or a different federal job. Yes.
So I have a question. If you're RIFed and you're offered another federal position while you're receiving your severance package, what are the procedures around that? Can you still continue to receive your severance until it's finished and pick up another federal job, or will the severance stop?
If you continue to receive severance after you got another federal job and it's in a different agency, they will come after you. It stops because you're getting a pay, you're already back employed by the federal government, so the severance pay stops. Your severance pay stops the day, if you still have funds left, it's over because now you're getting a federal paycheck. You got another federal job, and that's by law, okay?
But you won't lose. You have your years of invested service. Let's say it's 20 years. You get the 1 week per year in your severance package. So you get another another federal job and they stop the severance package, you can't use it again. It's like you're starting all over.
No, your federal career doesn't disappear because you got riffed. If you get reemployed, I'm sorry, your federal career does not disappear because you got riffed. The time will count. You'll come back and that time will still be reflected in your service comp date, okay? However, you're not going to get 2 federal checks. It's not going to happen, okay? The law says, all right, we helped you out because we involuntarily separated you. Now you have a job again, so you don't need this help anymore. You're going to have a paycheck, okay? All right. A couple things I wanted to cover on RIF very quickly, and I apologize, we're at 4:15, okay? I just wanted to cover a few things about the RIF process. If folks have to leave, I will not be offended, okay? Or if we have to end it, that's fine. I'll leave it up to Mr. Vera. We're good? If anybody wants to go, that's fine. I got a thick skin, okay? Okay, RIF is an objective process, and the one thing I want you to understand before you leave here is the 4 factors that RIF is based on, what your retention is based on, okay? Agencies have to use RIF if, this is another very important thing, if because of lack of work, lack of funds, which is coming to be the issue, a reorganization, lack of ceiling, if because of this, a federal employee is going to be separated or downgraded, the agency must use the RIF procedures, okay? I said separated or downgraded. If because of this, like say this happens, my budget's cut, okay? But I'm here in DC, or my agency, they're cutting my job, okay? But they have a job in Denver at my same grade. It's a reassignment, okay? I'm going to maintain my grade. I've just got to move to Denver. If I say I'm not going to go, do they separate me by RIF? Am I being separated or downgraded? That is not a RIF action, okay? That's a declination of an offer of a reassignment, okay? So they don't have to, if I separate, that's my own, I still get certain benefits, but it's not a RIF action, okay? So not all position abolishments result in a reduction in force, okay? And not all RIFs result in separations, okay? It could just be like that employee supervisor to employee ratio example used earlier. Some RIFs just result in downgrades. And if you're downgraded in a RIF, you have grade retention for a couple of years, so you really don't lose anything except prestige. Some people have a huge ego about maintaining the grade they attained. I personally would be happy if I had a job. I did get RIF back in '96, and I was the RIF person, and my letter said to contact me if I had any questions about it. They didn't proof very well. But anyway, RIF used to have negative connotations. Back before the 90s, you know, some of us here remember those, that if somebody saw that somebody was RIFed, it's like, oh, they must have hated him. They RIFed him to get rid of him. That's not the connotation anymore. RIF merely is you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And then the process takes over how it affects you, okay? But a lot of people have been RIFed in this town now and across the country, so it's no longer negative, it's just you didn't happen to be in a good situation at the time and you got caught up in it, okay? Alternatives, Vera VSIP, mega alternative, obviously. Hiring freezes and stuff or other things agencies can use, but the reason for Vera and VSIP are to avoid this process that we're going to get into real quick. Agency decides which jobs to abolish. Just like in Vera and VSIP, they decide which jobs to cover. Agency decides which jobs to abolish, when's it going to be effective, and the reason for the RIF, lack of work, lack of funds, okay, reorg, okay? After that, management's out, unless we have an offer at the same grade and management can help us decide, us meaning human resources, decide which job to give them. The process takes over now, okay? And there's one thing from an HR perspective, from a staffer, is that if you have a large RIF, say the agency had to abolish 20 jobs, and in RIF, that's a large RIF, because for each job abolishment, it's generally going to result in 3 to 4 additional actions. So 20 job abolishments could result in 60 people or 7. See, that's why I'm in HR. I don't do math. A lot more positions being affected, okay? So unless somebody knows if everybody who all was in the military, if they retired from the military, how much service they had, every job they've ever held, what their education was, nobody can predict the outcome of a RIF, because those are the things that come into play, okay? These are the key terms I want you all to be aware of in RIF. They only come into play in RIF, okay? Competitive area, competitive level, and retention factors. Competitive area is a RIF term. It's where the RIF is taking place. A RIF is a finite thing, okay? If I have to abolish 10 jobs over here and my competitive area, it has to be established organizationally and geographically. So say you are Division A and you are Division B. We're all in DC, okay? I have to abolish 10 jobs over here. I don't have any vacancies I can use. I've already offered Vera VSIP, okay? 10 people are going to walk out the door through the RIF process. It will only happen here. Nobody here in this competitive area can touch anybody over here, okay? That's what we mean by reduction in force competitive area. The organization and geographic location where all this stuff is going to happen, okay? If there are vacancies over here, management may decide to try and move people over, okay? But that's not a RIF action, okay? Competitive levels. People have a very high misconception of competitive levels. It's just a grouping of like positions. Like say, for instance, human resources specialists are in the 201 series. So all the 201 staffers, grade 12, would be in one competitive level. All the GS staffers, 201, grade 11, would be in a separate competitive level, okay? That's all a competitive level is grouping of like positions. Who thinks, all right, quick quiz. Who thinks that years of service is the highest retention standing factor for RIF? Okay, I'm sorry. Yes. Let me explain this better. Okay, most important. Who thinks that the length of service is the most important thing to have in RIF? Nobody. Interesting. Who thinks veterans' preference is the most important in a RIF? Who is just kind of sitting in here because they're waiting on their carpool? Okay. Oh, you did? Yes, sir. Oh, you're waiting on your carpool.
I have a question, but it's not related to RIF.
Okay, could we talk after? Okay, thank you. Okay. Tenure is the most important in RIF. Career or career conditional, or if you're in the accepted service, permanent or conditional service in the accepted service. I'm sorry. Tenure is career or career conditional in the competitive service. Okay. The accepted service is if it's considered permanent or a conditional requirement in that agency's accepted service. I know it's a little confusing, but you'll see. Then veterans' preference is next. Then seniority, the length of service, the length of your career. It's taken into account, but it's third. And then your performance ratings. That's it. 4 factors. 4 factors are used in determining if somebody stays or goes in RIF, in addition to the individual's personal qualifications. Does anybody see up there a grade? Does anybody see supervisory or managerial? 4 factors determine a person's retention standing in a RIF. Because I get this all the time. It's like, well, the supervisors are going to be saved. Not necessarily. Okay, a supervisor just by being a supervisor can't hit another journeyman employee or a lower level employee. Only those 4 factors come into play to determine who can hit who. Okay? Yes?
For clarification, so if you're a Schedule A employee, does that mean you can be RIFed in that group as well?
That's a very good question, and I apologize for not clarifying. In the competitive level, okay, competitive service are all with competitive service. Accepted service, which would be a Schedule A, are with accepted service. They're still divided by the grades. So say, for instance, a 201-11, a Human Resources Specialist 11 in the accepted service would only be in a competitive level with other 201 accepted service 11s, okay, under the same appointing authority. So say, for instance, a Schedule A for persons with disabilities, you would be in a competitive level if you were in the same job as somebody else under that same appointing authority of the persons with disability. Okay, so yes, the type of service will be different. And the agency does have the ability to, the agency decides which positions to abolish. Is a person in the Schedule A in the accepted service more vulnerable? What did I say earlier? I'm in HR. It depends. If they only hit competitive service jobs, competitive service individuals cannot hit accepted service individuals. However, if they only hit accepted service conversely can't hit competitive service. So it depends upon which positions are determined to be abolished. Okay? But yes, it does come into play. Okay. Those are the tenure groups, 1, 2, and 3. Okay? If you're on a time limited not to exceed a year, a temporary appointment not to exceed a year, no rights in RIF. You're basically, if you're a temporary employee, not to exceed a year appointment, you have no rights in RIF. Okay? That's called tenure group 0. There is no tenure, so there is no right to compete in a RIF. Okay? The subgroups, veterans preference, there's 2 for veterans. One is if the veteran is a 30% or more disabled vet. They're in the highest veterans group. Then there's all the other veterans preference eligibles, and then there's the non-preference eligibles. Remember, we had tenure, and then we have veterans preference. Length of service is total civilian and military service. Comes into play for reduction in force. Okay? Performance credit, the 3 most recent performance appraisals received in the last 4 years before a RIF is given certain credit. Okay? But the one thing I want to show you that will make this a little bit more sensical in a way is an actual retention register. Where are we? Okay. This is a retention register. Okay? I am not going to be able to reach that. You see the 20112? Okay, remember said it's, so all of these people are 20112s. Okay? Do you see Al? He's a 1 AD. So he's a career, 30% or more disabled veterans. Right? Okay? Remember, tenure, veterans preference, length of service, performance credit. Barb has more time in than Al. Why is she listed second and not first? The veterans preference. Al has higher veterans preference. He's an AD. Tenure and veterans preference beat length of service. Okay? That's what I mean. That's why unless you know everybody's veterans preference and how long everybody's worked, I don't know how the heck anybody's going to predict the outcome of a RIF. Okay? Carl and Pat are the same thing. Oh, hey, there's a thing here. Pat has more service than Carl. Why is Pat listed underneath Carl? Come on. Oh, come on. Veterans preference? Remember? That's a veterans preference. The A means veteran. Okay? Now, this is a competitive level. In RIF, we have what's called round 1 competition and surprisingly named round 2 competition. Okay? Round 1 is the competition to stay in this competitive level, meaning that I'm not going to be affected in the RIF. Okay? Say management decides to abolish Al's job. Okay? Al has what's called the highest retention standing in his competitive level. So management might say, you know, I never liked Al. He's been a thorn in my side for the last 20 years. I want that guy gone. I'm going to abolish his job in this RIF. Management don't know what a competitive level list looks like. That's the HR office that has all that. They can abolish Al's job, and what happens is Al is going to take Pat's job. Okay? Because this thing is in my... Okay. Because Al is the top, people are released from their competitive level from the bottom up. So just because Al's job is abolished, because of his superior standing, he's just going to be reassigned to Pat's job. Now Pat, there's nobody below Pat. So now Pat is released from her competitive level, and she will now be subject to RIF competition, what's called bump and retreat. The important thing you need to know about the accepted service. The accepted service only has round 1 competition unless the agency allows them and specifically provides them the bump and retreat rights that the competitive service has. And we're going to just go over bump and retreat real quick in a sec. That means if all these folks were in the accepted service, if this was an accepted service competitive level, once Al took Pat's job, Pat doesn't have a job. Pat will be separated by reduction in force. Okay? Unless the agency can find something else. Okay? That's why I wanted you to see the importance of a competitive level and the 4 factors. Okay? What did I do with it? Here it is. The assignment rights, one thing real quick, two more terms I want you to be aware of because they're used and people think they know what they mean and they don't. Unless they're in HR. Then some of those folks don't know either. Okay. Bump and retreat. Okay? A bump means, like I am a career non-veterans preference eligible. I am a 1B. Okay? If I was a career veterans preference eligible, I'd be a 1A. A bump means I can take anybody's job who's in a lower subgroup. It doesn't matter how much service they had. Okay, going back to our competitive level, like say this is all different one. Al is a 1AD. Say he was in a competitive level by himself, and he's in the competitive service, so he has a bump right to go into round 2. If Barb, Carl, and Pat were in another competitive level, he could bump any one of them because he has superior career, 30% or more disabled vet. He can bump any of those people. It doesn't matter that anybody might have more service than him. Okay? That's a bump. All that person has to do in bump is qualify for the job. And it doesn't matter. They don't have to go from series to series. You're not limited that way. The only thing that's limited in a bump is you can only go down 3 grade levels. So like say this is a 12, and I swear I do this every time. It's only 3 grades or levels, so it's 12 to 11, 11 to 9, 9 to 7. This is as low as a person's bump right goes as a 12 in a 2-grade interval series, okay? If I was in a 1-grade interval series, like say I was a GS10 mechanic, okay? That's a 1-grade interval series. I can still only go down 3 grades. 3 gates. I learned that. Okay. So it's 10, 9, 8, 7. I can only have a right down to a 7. Okay? If there is a job within here that I have a right to based upon my bump right, I get that job. If there's a 6, I don't have a right to it. And the agency cannot offer it to me under RIF. Okay? So I'm saying, do you see why we use VEER and VSIP to avoid this? Okay? Because nobody can predict the outcome. Employees can't, managers can't. It's a very, very disruptive process. But to be honest, it's the most objective process. How else are you going to pick and choose? To be honest. Okay? If somebody can come up with a better system, more power to you. Okay? So that's the bump. And then we also have retreat. Retreat means going to a job that's occupied by somebody in the same subgroup as me. I'm a career non-vet. I'm a 1B. I can retreat to a job held by another 1B who has less service than me, but only if I held a job like that before. You're retreating back to what you held before. Okay? That's the basis for the term retreat. And it's different. And that's where service does come into play. Okay? So those are the two things. Bump, we always say bump lower, bump to a lower subgroup, retreat to the same subgroup. So if people think, people say, I could bump. This is just one of my little nuances because people think they start talking and go, well, or what the worst part is somebody calls me and says, somebody told me that I could take out this person's, I could bump this person. And it's like, is that person in HR? Have they been in HR in the past 5, 10 years? Then don't listen to what anybody says about RIF or VEER and VSIP. Go to your HR office, unless they are an HR specialist in the federal government. Our system obviously is different, okay? But if somebody says somebody can bump me out, it's like, well, what are you? I'm a 1A, okay? I'm a career veteran. It's like, well, do you know if they ever served in the military? It's like, no, we've talked. He's never been in the military. Then there's no way that the person who's a non-veterans preference eligible can ever bump a veteran unless it's tenure, okay? Say, for instance, I'm a career conditional employee, okay, my first 3 years of my job, and I'm a 30% disabled vet. Tenure is number 1. A career non-vet can bump out a career conditional 30% vet, okay, because tenure is number 1, okay? So the one thing, how many factors are there? Everybody go with very good. Okay, that's the key. It's all very important. That's what determines who stays and who goes in a RIF. And people have a lot of misconception about that people can pick and choose. The managers can pick and choose the jobs to abolish. The process determines what happens after those decisions are made. Okay? And the last thing I just wanted to specify as a bump and retreat, we have information on our website at opm.gov. If you click on, again, the subject index, and click on R for reduction in force, and under General, we have a tab that has Employee Resources. And we have an employee's guide to VEER and VSIP, the summaries of VEER and VSIP, as well as reduction in force, okay? The one other thing I want you all to know is that in relation to RIF is by law, anybody who's affected by a RIF is entitled to a 60 calendar day notice of what's going to happen, okay? I've been reached for a RIF. They hand me my notice. I've been reached for a RIF action. The notice will give me a lot of information, but the first thing that's going to jump in my face is that you have been reached for separation from the federal service, okay? It's going to take a minute to absorb, if you're in that, and I sincerely hope you never are, but if you do, take it, go home, absorb it, because you need information. Don't get mad, throw it down, and haul out, cuss out your boss, all of that. Oh, all right, I'm sorry. Okay. Because during that 60-day notice period, things can happen. Jobs can become available. So don't walk out the door let the notice run because you might get a job offer during that 60 days. There's no guarantee, but if you separate, you definitely won't get it. Okay, that's very, very important if somebody gets a RIF letter, is that let the process run its course, because you might be able to say, if you want to go, fine. If you want to take the severance, excellent, go ahead. But if you want to stay in the government, let the process run its course, because things potentially could change, okay? And I am way over time, and I thank you all for being so patient, and thank you very much for your questions. And I'll be hanging around, so if anybody has any other questions, come on down, okay? But thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Again, you know, all those questions during your presentation kind of ran it over a little bit, but we really appreciate all the benefit we've gotten from it. On VERA, VSIP, and RIF, make sure you talk to your HR people, ask your questions to them, because each agency has its own rules and specific policies. And I think Nick Vera wants to say something. A small gift for you from DHHIG, from our members and our board, in thanks for your work. Thank you very much for coming, for all of the information you've provided. Thank you very much.